Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special early edition of Bourbon Bites. I know a few of you are getting your notifications now, and you're like, what the heck? Why is he on already? But don't worry, it'll be worth it, I promise you. So good to see so many of you here already in the chat. You guys were pre-gaming a bit before we got started. Shout out to our mods, Brian Bernicke and Donnie the Linux Cat. Good to see you guys. And of course, Adriana and Sugar Kitty, our patrons here, tuning in early. So I imagine more of you guys will trickle in as we get going. But like I said, we have a really, really special stream here today because we have a master distiller yet again joining us. Can you guys believe I've had two master distillers on in the past month and a half? I think it's crazy, but no, I'm really, really excited for the opportunity to bring them on and chat and hopefully answer some of you guys' questions. So I did ask on our Discord earlier if anyone had any questions, so I got a couple there. But if you guys have any questions throughout the night, feel free to just type them in the chat, of course. And of course, if you want to send a super chat to get your message highlighted and featured, and then of course, you can do that as well. Just quick announcement before we get going. We are still doing our after party hangout. It'll be at about 7:15 p.m. Pacific. So I'm actually going to be premiering a new video, my new top 5 whiskeys of 2021. You only need 5 whiskeys of 2021. I should correct myself. We're not there yet. So that will be premiering at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. But as soon as we finish that, we'll head over to Discord for our after party Patreon hangout. So if you want to become part of that, we're also doing our monthly hangout this Saturday. So all that info is down in the description below. You can join at patreon.com/bourbonbites. But yeah, I think that's all of our announcements. Please join me in welcoming a very, very special guest for tonight's stream. Not only is this a great stream to have during Women's History Month, but this woman is making history. This is Tennessee's first female distiller. Please welcome Master Distiller and Senior Vice President, Alex Castle.
Hello.
Welcome. So glad to have you on.
Happy to be here.
So this has actually been in the works for a while. I actually met Zoe, who I believe is your marketing person.
Yes.
We had a virtual Repeal Day Expo that happened literally December. And as soon as I met her, I was like, I would love to have Alex on just to talk about, because it's such a cool story. Old Dominick, and the fact that, like I said, first female head distiller. First of all, congratulations, obviously. I mean,
Thank you.
Forever. But yeah, I just thought it'd be really fun to have you on, especially I honestly didn't even plan it to be Women's History Month, but I was like, oh no, I haven't done next year though. I'm going to have a whole month where I'm going to have tons of women across the industry on. Seriously, you guys hold me to that. But well, I guess first of all, welcome. I actually just poured myself our first drink of the night. I guess I have the Old Dominick Memphis Toddy. So I feel like let's kick it off with that story. I guess that's kind of part of your origin story too of Old Dominick. So tell us about it.
Yeah, that bottle is exactly why Old Dominick exists today in the form that it is. So our brand does predate Prohibition. It was founded in 1866 by our company's founder, Domenico Canali, who was an Italian immigrant. And he founded Old Dominick Whiskey. And while he was doing that, also created what was called the Dominick Toddy. It was a bottled cocktail, basically. And a bottle of that Dominick Toddy survived.
Oh yeah, we got a picture of it. I'm about to pull it up. It's going to cover your face, but just want to show you guys. Literally, look how cool that is. It's the one on the left is the old bottle. The one on the right, of course, is the new bottle. But how cool is that? And also, there's their distillery right there, which I absolutely love your sign, by the way.
Thank you. That's a 13-foot tall rooster.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I've seen video from the distillery. Man, I can't wait to make it out to Memphis and visit someday, because it just. I mean, your bar and your tasting room is just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So awesome. Yeah. So that was not necessarily the start of Old Dominick, but that was kind of, were they the first bottled cocktail, or was?
We believe that it was the first, at least bottled toddy, but there just really aren't a whole lot of records that show there are any other bottled cocktails during that time. So we can't say definitively, but we do think it's definitely one of the first ones.
And I did notice on the bottle itself, it does say enjoy over ice. Now, it does say cracked ice, I believe. I do not have cracked ice. I'm not that fancy.
Most people don't have cracked ice.
But I've actually been enjoying it. I'm so glad this amount survived until the end, because I've been drinking this ever since I got this bottle. It's so good. It's such a refreshing, it's like a winter cocktail, but also over ice. It's like year-round cocktail.
It does really well in tiki cocktails. Tiki bars have taken that product and made it their own. They love it.
Wow. I actually, man, I gotta find some of those recipes. I got a little bit left to try that. I just like it on its own, though. I mean, it's like a cinnamon bomb, but like in a really good way. It has that sweetness from the honey, and of course, there's a lot of whiskey. What's the ABV on this? It's like
it
30%.
is. Yep. So it's a very easy drink. But yeah, that bottle survived Prohibition, and in 2013 we found it. It was full, still wax sealed with liquid in it, and they decided to have that liquid analyzed. And through that analysis, we were able to reverse engineer the recipe and kind of determine what was in at least that bottle. It developed what is now the Memphis Toddy, which is a bourbon base. We typically use a 4 to 6 year old bourbon, and it's a high rye bourbon mash bill, which we'll try later.
Yes.
And we steep it kind of like a tea with cinnamon, clove, black pepper, cardamom, and citrus peels. And then also add some sugar in there as well to give it that nice like consistency and sweetness.
Yeah, but what I love about it too is like it's not overly sweet. A lot of time these like premixed cocktails are just like sugar bombs. This one, the spices are what stand out to me.
Yes, and it's not syrupy sweet. I know some of the ones that are out there actually have that really thick, almost cough syrup consistency, and this doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, now is this available nationwide, or is this like just like a Memphis thing?
So it's available in most of the markets that we're available in, but you can check our website, olddominick.com. We have a where to find us section of the website, type in your zip code, and you can actually search it per SKU. So if you just want to know where Toddy's available, you can find it that way.
Awesome. That's awesome. I forgot to put your link in the description, but I will put it down after this stream. You guys, what's the website? Is it olddominick.com?
Yep, olddominick.com. And just remember, it is 2 Ds, Old Dominick, and there is a K at the end.
See, I did have to double check my spelling before I set up this stream. So, well, that's awesome. Well, I guess let's talk a little bit about yourself. Like, what's kind of been your journey? Just kind of like a summary of how you got to where you're at now. I know you've had some history in biochemical engineering. Which is
chemical, yep.
Yes, that's so cool. So I guess tell us your story.
Yeah, I decided in high school I fell in love with chemistry, physics, and calculus, being the nerd that I am. And my mom said, you can become a chemical engineer. I said, okay, that's great. What do you do with that? I'm not a teacher, so what can I do besides teach? And she literally said, the first thing was, you can make beer and be a brewmaster, or you can make bourbon and be a master distiller.
I like your mom.
And the funny thing is, she really doesn't drink, and she drank even less when I was in high school. So I don't know where she came from.
You're from Kentucky, correct?
I'm from Kentucky, yeah.
So maybe that had something to do with it.
They did take me to Maker's Mark when I was like 5 or 6.
So they maybe secretly they may not like the whiskey, but they may like the process of it, I think.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
She told me that, and so something about it just kind of clicked, and I loved the idea of it. So I went to the University of Kentucky, studied chemical engineering. While I was there, did a co-op with Alltech, which is a company based out of Lexington, Kentucky. And they, at the time, had animal nutrition supplements, which is kind of where I started. But they also had a brewery that produced Kentucky ale and Kentucky bourbon barrel ale. And so that's kind of what drew me to them, was for that. And while I was there, they actually added a distillery, and I got to start it up. I got to help them with it. Oh, and that's now called Town Branch Bourbon.
Oh, yeah. I actually haven't tried it, but I'm very familiar with them.
Yes. So I got to help them get that place started. So that's where I got my start, and where I got trained. Fast forward, graduate college. I spent a year making laundry detergent because no one was hiring.
Okay.
Fortunately, after a year, I got to leave and move back to Lexington and worked for Wild Turkey, and was there for 4 years as a production supervisor. Over top, I was in charge of third shift and first shift, and was in charge of the process from grain receiving and handling all the way through distillation. And then their spent grain facility was our department as well. And from there, I got recruited via LinkedIn.
Oh, nice.
To move to Memphis and help start up Old Dominick.
That's incredible. I feel like most people that I've talked to that, are either master distillers, like I talk to master distillers all the time. Only one. I talked to Greg Snyder a couple of weeks back. But I feel like everyone has a start either at Wild Turkey, Campari, or a start at like Brown Foreman. I feel like that branches out into the rest of the whiskey world. Is that true among like your colleagues?
Yeah, so I think part of it, like Brown Foreman has always been very receptive to internships. And so they do a lot of partnerships with the universities in Kentucky. So I think that's part of it, is that it's very easy for young people to get started at Brown Foreman because of that partnership. In Wild Turkey, I think they just were willing to take chance on people. And I timed it to where they just moved to the new facility. So they were looking to really hire quite a few people to man this massive production facility.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm just reading through the comments here. Wexley says, I saw this channel on the news. Apparently I was on Inside Edition today. So they reached out. I did a live stream a couple weekends ago where I was in Las Vegas and I was like gambling away my stimulus check. Of course, I didn't gamble the whole thing, but it was just a kind of a fun concept.
Yeah.
So they reached out to me and they're like, hey, do you want to be interviewed? I'm like, yes. But then they never followed up. I'm like, okay, well, they obviously don't want to use me. And then all of a sudden, like, people are messaging like, I saw you on Inside Edition. I'm like, okay, so I gotta look that segment up.
That's awesome.
It's like, why can't you feature my whiskey streams? Why does that have to be the gambling?
It's gonna be gambling.
Well, actually, that's a good point though. So what I do here with my channel is I like to do a mix of whiskey and gaming, like retro gaming and like modern gaming. So a question I always like to ask my guest, did you ever grow up playing any games, or are there any games you play now?
Oh, definitely grew up playing games. My dad had, and I forget which version, but we had an Atari system.
Oh, nice.
Growing up, and so I grew up playing Pong and Frogger.
Oh man, I love Frogger. Frogger's so good.
I still get sucked into it when I go somewhere and they have it.
Oh yeah, well that's
yeah.
One of my favorite things to do back when bars were open. They're still not working on that in Southern California, but I love going to old like arcade bars that have like the vintage machines. Yes. I always play Frogger. I always play Donkey Kong and the original Mario.
Yep.
Love those.
Yeah, so we had Atari, but we also, my brother and I would go in together, and we had a Sega Genesis at one point. So I remember Cool Spot.
Oh man,
the 7-Up guy
on Super Nintendo. See, I was on the Nintendo side of things, so most games weren't, like you guys had your like, what do you guys had, like Sonic and all that stuff. Yep. We had Mario, but Cool Spot was also on Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So I know the music from that game. I hear it in my head like right now.
So we had a Super Nintendo, but I don't remember Cool Spot on Super Nintendo. But we definitely had Donkey Kong and a couple different Marios, and eventually, expanded to the PlayStations as well. So.
Sure. Well, that's awesome. I feel like everyone has some sort of like history with, whether it's like Pong or Super Nintendo, things like that. Well, that's really cool.
Depending on your generation, at the very least, you most likely had a Game Boy, and you most likely played Pokemon.
Oh wait, which Pokemon game was your favorite?
So my brother and I both had the color Game Boys, and I think he had the blue,
right,
and I had the red.
Okay, see, I was the different. I had the yellow, the Pikachu edition.
I don't know if we ever got that one.
Yeah, I don't know. That was my first Pokemon game because I had the Game Boy Color. That was my first Game Boy as well. So, man, I miss those games. I need to find a way to play them now. We have our first super chat here, Mr. Whiskey Shits. Cheers, Mr. Whiskey Shits. He is a viewer of the show. We actually just hung out on Discord the other night. So good to see you here, man.
Nice.
Well, cool. So I guess let's talk a little bit about Huling Station. So this is this the first whiskey release you guys have had at Old Dominick, correct?
Yes, but this whole product line, the Huling Station line, is all distilled for us. It's our custom mash bill that's distilled for us at MGP in Indiana.
Awesome. Yeah, big fan of MGP here, so no worries there.
They're good. They know what they're doing.
They do good stuff, and I think people that have a bad opinion on them, why? Because literally everyone uses them. They're so good. I did a stream with their George Remus brand over on my friend's channel the other month. Wow, time's flying. No, but seriously, no, big fan of MGP here. So, but you said you guys do a custom mash bill for them? Yes.
So we have 2 custom mash bills that we work with them on, and it's our high rye bourbon and then our wheat whiskey.
Sorry if there's a carb.
That's what you would hear if I was actually at the distillery right now. So it's fine.
it's just a car backing up.
But yeah, we took our recipes, our yeast, our barrels to MGP back in 2014. So about 2.5 years before the distillery was actually ready.
Oh, wow. So you guys have been basically, that's an interesting approach, because I think a lot of people just like pick some MGP barrels to start out with, but you guys from the very beginning, y'all knew what you wanted, you got it made, and then that was your first release. So as you said, it was like 2 years old when it first came out.
So we distilled it in 2014 and didn't release it until 2018.
Oh, okay. 4 years. Wow.
So it was, yeah.
That's awesome. But you guys also have like a gin and a vodka that you guys were putting out.
Yes. Yeah. We actually at the distillery distilled 2 vodkas and then also a gin, and are putting away our own whiskeys that should start to come out next year.
Oh, that's exciting. Are you going to use the same mash bill for those whiskeys?
For the bourbon and wheat, we are using the exact same mash bill, slightly different distillation proofs and slightly different barrel entry proofs. So while they're the same mash bill, it actually should still yield a different product. Mm-hmm. And then that's 2 of the mash bills. And then we also make a Tennessee whiskey, which is a completely different mash bill.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I guess let's get started with the wheat. The wheat one is what you want to start with, right? Yes.
So this is our wheat whiskey. It's not a wheated bourbon. It's actually a wheat whiskey because it is 83% wheat. So very high wheat content. We do bottle it at 90 proof. That proof was just determined through taste tests. We tried it at multiple proofs, and that was where it kind of seemed to shine the best. Mm-hmm. This particular batch is 6 years old.
Okay.
And we age in number 4 char barrels. All of our products are. So we do the alligator char.
Is there a reason do you just prefer that char level?
Yeah, just a preference.
Awesome. I feel like that literally the stream that we had with Greg Snyder was literally just 75% nerding out about barrels and char levels. Like he is really into that. And these guys in the chat here, they're very technical. So we might get some technical questions coming up.
Perfect.
Do have a super chat from Tom Flanagan. He says, Alex, we hope to see you at the Memphis Music Festival again this year. Yeah, we were talking a little bit about that before that. I really want to go to that.
Yes. And is it the same lineup that was supposed to be in 2020? I don't know. I can't wait to see the lineup. I definitely missed having that festival last year. It's always a fun festival.
That's really cool. And we were talking, I've never been to Memphis, but I feel like everyone always tells me to go to Memphis. Like if I'll mention Tennessee, like the first thought in my mind is always Nashville. They're like, oh no, skip Nashville. No offense to anyone in Nashville, but like skip Nashville, you got to check out Memphis. Why is that? What is so great about the community there that you've noticed?
There's less people.
Okay.
It's definitely nowhere near as crowded. The traffic is nowhere near as bad.
Okay.
But Memphis it has its own personality. It has a serious grit to it. I know the Grizzlies are grit and grind, but there's a reason for it, is because that really is Memphis. Mm-hmm. But we love local. We like downtown, you see no chain restaurants, no chain anything. It's just, we support our local businesses just in a way that I had never experienced anywhere else before.
I love communities like that. I mean, I think another one closer to where I'm from South Carolina, but Asheville, North Carolina kind of has a similar vibe.
Absolutely.
So there's tons of craft breweries, tons of artist shops and stuff like that. I love that vibe. Yep. A little harder to find out here in Los Angeles. I'm sure there are communities with it, but I definitely miss that every now and then. Yes. We have some viewers that are actually from the area. So Trev, the Bourbon Wrench, says he will be at Memphis. Memphis is a stone's throw away. I know Donnie, the Linux Cat, and his wife, Diana, they're also from the Memphis area. So lots of Tennessee folks here that apparently like watching my whiskey reviews.
There you go. Well, it's because Tennessee people like whiskey.
That's true. And I've really I have learned about so many different Tennessee whiskey brands that I didn't even know existed, including you guys. Like I feel like Tennessee whiskey is kind of booming right now, especially with the smaller craft distilleries. Is that something that you've noticed? Have you noticed a lot more popping up around the state?
Absolutely. And part of it is because in the state of Tennessee, prior to 2009, 2010, you could only distill spirits in 3 counties in the state.
Okay.
So prior to 2010, there were no other distilleries other than Jack Daniel's, George Dickel, and Pritchard's. That's all you were allowed to have. Mm-hmm. And then finally, in 2009, 2010, they fought to get the legislation change, and you could suddenly start making distilled spirits anywhere in the state.
I was like, were like Jack Daniels and Tequila, were they the reason that was existed? They're like, oh no, we are controlling all of the Tennessee whiskey.
It's something that dates back to Prohibition.
Okay.
Because it wasn't just whiskey that couldn't be distilled. You couldn't distill vodka. You couldn't distill gin. Nothing. You could not make anything outside of those 3 counties.
Wow.
Which is ironic because where Jack Daniels is a dry county. So figure that one out.
A lot too. It makes no sense to me, but
it's the South. It's the Bible Belt.
I know. I'm from the South. I was very disappointed. I made a trip back to South Carolina a couple weeks ago, and I was like ready to go bourbon hunting, but then I realized it was Sunday, and I was like, crap, everything's closed. See, out here in Los Angeles, like even like we have liquor in our Walmarts, like all 24/7. Like it's definitely something you got to keep in your mind.
Absolutely.
So I just poured the wheat whiskey. Now, what was the mash bill you said? You said it was 83% wheat?
83% wheat and 12% corn, and then 5% malted barley.
Now, is it your recipe, or is it based on the history of Old Dominick?
It's my recipe. The way Old Dominick worked before Prohibition is he would just buy barrels from distilleries. And so it would just constantly change, and we have no records, kind of like with the Dominick Toddy and Memphis Toddy. There are no records of the recipes for any of them.
Gotcha. So I don't have too much experience with wheat whiskey. It's definitely very light. Like I think that's obviously what you expect with the wheat whiskey, but it's very like normally like with some bourbons you get some of those darker fruit notes. This one is leaning very, very light to me. I
always get a lot of hay notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's different because like with the rye, you get like I always say rye is like a dry like grass note, but it's a different note than the hay. I see that.
And yeah, wheat is a weird category because there's not that many wheat whiskeys out there. And so most people drink it and they don't really know what they're supposed to expect from it because they've never had it before.
What was the motivation to do that? Was that because there weren't enough of them out there that you wanted to do one?
Yep. Be different. Find a category that wasn't being bombarded at the time. And for me, I like it because I do think it's a nice introductory whiskey. So if you've ever tried whiskeys before and you found bourbons to be a little too in your face, a little too strong, rye whiskeys, same thing. This could help get you kind of over the threshold and make you more comfortable in that whiskey world.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think even with like a wheated bourbon, like Maker's Mark, I think a lot of people, that was their intro whiskey because it doesn't have the rye spice that, I mean, I love whiskey too, but it's definitely way more approachable. Oh, wow. Definitely. I'm getting the hay note a lot more on the palate.
The palate, yeah.
I was telling it earlier, but I definitely get what you're talking about right there. Wow. That's really nice. What's the proof on this one again?
It's 90.
Okay. I was going to say it has a little bit extra like oomph there with it.
Yeah, but 80. It was good at 80 proof, but that 90 gave it just a little bit more oomph to it.
Yeah.
That the bourbon drinkers that were doing our taste test seem to like it.
Well, yeah, because I think wheat whiskey in general typically drinks a lower proof than it is. So bumping it up to 90 puts this in a really good spot. I mean, I think it's one of the more interesting. Honestly, I've only had 2 wheat whiskeys. I've had the Bernheim one and this one, and probably maybe one other. I don't remember. But wow, I think this is definitely the most interesting wheat whiskey I've had.
Thank you. There's only like 6 wheat whiskeys available.
I was going to say, the only one that I know of is the Heaven Hill one, but
well, was it Woodford? Somebody released one.
You're right. Woodford did release, and I tried that one. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think a couple people started releasing some at the end of 2019, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we have some people in the chat drinking along with this. So Donnie is drinking. He says the wheat whiskey is very soft and the finish is different. I don't get a bite from this. Sort of a bread finish.
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome. And Adriana, our friend Adriana says, these mash bills are so unique and interesting. Love it.
Thank you.
Jason from the Mash and Drum. Everyone go check out his channel. I don't know. He's laughing at something Tammy said, but.
Oh, Tammy, what did you say?
Tammy's awesome. She's also a good friend of the channel here. So Adriana asks, is it drying? Like, is it drier than like a typical bourbon?
I do think it is a bit of a drier finish on it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean it's dry, but it's not like overwhelmingly dry. Like it's not off-putting in any way, I don't think.
No.
And price-wise, these are all pretty affordable, right? I forgot to look up the prices, and I apologize. But what's the range typically for these?
Yeah, and of course it's different every market. So the bourbon, the red label, is our everyday available whiskey, and it's usually somewhere between $35 to $40.
That's awesome, right?
Maybe 42. It's somewhere in that ballpark. Whereas the wheat and the blend are a little more limited because we don't have as much wheat barrels. And those typically are anywhere from 44 up to maybe 50 at our most expensive.
But still really, really approachable. I mean, I think that's the problem that a lot of, newer distilleries have. They want to get their product out and they want to make money. So they put out like a $80 to $100 whiskey, which is great.
That's 2 years old.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen plenty of that. That's not how I like. So I love the approach you guys had, because you guys started early on, wait till your product was at least 4 years old, and then put it out at an affordable price point. That's really, really cool and really admirable, I think.
My husband and I both are bourbon drinkers. We do like to enjoy bourbon at the house, and we struggle to pay too much for a bottle. And so I wanted to make sure that we weren't putting out a product that we couldn't have bought 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Like we want people to be able to afford it and actually enjoy it, and maybe even make it their daily drinker. If you get too much over our price point, it's hard to make that your daily.
For sure. I mean, I think I was that person for the longest time. Like, I mean, I didn't get into whiskey in general until like probably 4 years ago. And even then I had like 2 bottles in my house total. And if anything was over, it's funny. I have some friends out here. I remember telling them when I first moved out here to Los Angeles, I was like, oh, I don't want to buy a bottle over $60. Now I'm spending a lot more than that on whiskey. So
we've always drawn the line at about 150. So that way you can get those special bottles. You can justify the special bottles.
Exactly. I think so. I just recently, Single Cask Nation put out a 24-year-old Heaven Hill pre-fire. I paid almost $300 for that one, but that's the most expensive. Before that, the most I've ever spent was $160, and that was on a Thomas H. Handy. So
I have to ask, you spent that much on that bottle?
Yes.
Have you opened it?
Oh yeah, I reviewed it. I made a review. So.
Okay.
Of course, and I open it to share with friends too. I'm a big believer in whiskey is about the experience, not just the taste. So I'm not a fan of hoarding bottles. I get some people do it. It's an investment, whatever. I prefer to drink it with friends. That's how I.
We don't buy bottles that we don't plan on opening. I have a handful that have meaning to my career that will never be opened, but that's it.
Sure, that's awesome. Oh, our friend Rock Gut Review says the Huling Station rep just stopped by yesterday to give us samples. So he has another channel here too. He also goes live on Thursday night. So I guess he might have you on soon. We'll see. I don't know.
Reach out.
Very cool. Well, I really like this wheat whiskey, and we're going to talk a bit more about it when we get to the blend. But are you ready to move on to the bourbon?
Yeah, let's do it.
So what's this? I know you said it was a high rye bourbon. What's the rest of the info on this one?
So this is 52% corn. So it qualifies as a bourbon, but it is 44% rye.
Wow. Okay. That's one of the highest ones I've heard. That's still a bourbon.
We say high rye. We
really
mean it. We mean it. Because, to be a rye whiskey, you have to be 51% rye. So we're kind of towing the line there. And this is at 100 proof.
Awesome. What was the reason behind, going so high rye? Are you just you like rye whiskey or what?
I do. I love a rye whiskey. And again, it was trying to be different. There's so much out there. The market is flooded with bourbons and a lot of great ones. And so it's, how do you stand out? How do you do something different? And that was one way of doing it, is just go for a mash bill that people haven't seen before. Mm-hmm. And by getting to that high rye content, maybe we can appeal to people who tend to really just favor rye whiskeys. Maybe we can satisfy both of those categories with one product.
Gotcha. Yeah. See, I definitely prefer the bourbon, but I also am a fan of rye whiskey. And a lot of people with rye whiskey, I feel like it's the opposite approach. A lot of it is like what they call barely legal rye. So it's like 52% rye and then most of the corn. So it's like you guys flip-flopped it a bit.
Yeah. And what's funny is I worked at Wild Turkey, and of course they make a rye whiskey. They're one of the few distilleries at the time, at least, that actually made their rye. Mm-hmm. And it was 75% rye.
Wow.
So they went for it too.
Well, it's funny. I hear people refer to Wild Turkey is high rye bourbon, but I don't think their rye is not as high as you guys.
It's 75% corn, 13% rye.
See, that's the thing.
They Wild Turkey will tell you it's a high rye.
You guys, if they're high rye, you guys are astronomical rye bourbon.
Yeah, they're 13%. That's nothing.
Oh wow, the nose on this one. It's. I mean, I think the rye is jumping out of the glass here.
And just like the wheat, this is about 6 to 6.5 years old.
That's awesome. So the stuff you put some stuff in the barrels at your facility. When do you guys expect? Did you say? I'm sorry, you probably already said this. When do you guys expect at your own time?
We're hoping to release our Tennessee whiskey, just because it's our oldest one. Release it probably next fall, so fall 2022. We were hoping to do it this year, but I ran out of warehouse space. And had to shut down for a year.
I was like, is that a good problem to have? I don't know. Maybe probably not.
No, it's not a good problem. We had to shut down for a year. And so we either had to do a super, super small release in 2021 and then just stop putting stuff out, or delay the release a year, let the gap kind of close, and then do our release that way. And so that's what we decided to do.
Gotcha. What's the story with the Tennessee whiskey, or is that kind of under wraps for now? Like,
we talk about it.
I was like, what makes it different? I'm curious to hear about it.
So it's 75% corn. It's much higher corn content than our bourbon. 13% rye, 12% malted barley. It's just a very traditional bourbon recipe. You see that a lot of places. And we do filter it through sugar maple charcoal. We do the Lincoln County process. So it is actually a Tennessee whiskey. We do the number 4 char, and it just turned 4 about a month and a half ago.
Awesome.
So it's coming along quite nicely. And our goal was to have 3 very, very different whiskeys from each other, and I think we've done that.
Awesome. But the other ones, so you're still going to continue to release the Huling Station for a bit, right?
Yep.
So, but the other ones, the other 2 that you're distilling, in addition to the Tennessee, they follow similar to these flavor profile, or like mash bills.
Yeah. So it should actually be kind of fun if you're a fan of Huling Station, when it's time to do Old Dominick high rye bourbon and Old Dominick wheat whiskey. It should actually be kind of fun for a consumer to buy both.
Yeah, for sure.
And taste them side by side.
Yeah, because some people will do where they like start blending their stuff into, the sourced whiskey. But I think doing it side by side, especially when you have someone that's the same master distiller, I think that's such a cool comparison. I would absolutely love to do that when that whiskey is ready.
Yeah, so it should be a fun little comparison that you're able to do.
So I'm drinking the bourbon now. It's definitely different. I mean, this is more traditional, what you expect. I think there's a bit of smokiness there. I think that, I guess you said it's 6.5 years old, so maybe that's something. And also the number 4 char could make some influence in that. What kind of profile do you look for, like with the bourbon?
It depends. So we do 6 barrels per batch, so we're very, very small batch.
Oh wow, okay.
And so each batch is kind of nuanced. It's a little different. But typically our batches, we kind of go with, and this one I get it like on the finish, a lot of dark cherry and other like dark fruits. Oh,
wow. I always try to look past cherry because I feel like that's like a generic note that people say. But when you said cherry, like it's a very natural cherry, which I really like. It almost, actually, I've had a cherry flavored whiskey before with Traverse City. And that's also a really natural cherry. So as soon as you said cherry, I'm like, whoa.
It just pops.
Yes. But it's in the background, but it's balanced really nicely with the smokiness that I was getting on it.
I usually get a lot of dark chocolate in these batches too. This one a little less than some of the other ones that we do. So sometimes it's like a dark chocolate covered cherry.
That's awesome. Got another super chat from Jason at the Mash and Drum. He says, great interview, Clifton. Thank you. Old Dominick is making incredible whiskey. Finally got a bottle of Huling Station in Kentucky. Cheers. Well, cheers to you, Jason. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Yes, and thanks for buying in Kentucky. Woo-hoo.
Oh, yeah. Are you guys in California yet at all, or no?
So we were for a little while, and right now we're just doing it through an online retailer. Mm-hmm. So I believe you can actually order it online, but
is that
again, we do seal box. They're based out of DC, but then there's a company called LibDib
I'm not
And
familiar. I've ordered from Sealbox before. I mean, so their prices are so good. I mean, they ship to California, so I didn't realize you guys are on there. That's awesome.
yeah, we're with Sealbox, and then like I said, there's LibDib, and you can find it on our website. We show all of our online retailer options.
Sure.
But there is LibDib. I forget how it works, but they're based out of New York and California. So you might look into it because it might be a little cheaper to ship.
What? How do you spell that? LibDib or LibDib?
LibDib, LIBDIB.
V or B? Oh, B. Oh, found Liberation Distribution. Okay, I will have that pulled up and look into that as soon as we finish this thing.
I'm not entirely sure how their bottle works versus like Sealbox, but I know we are shipping cases out to them pretty regularly.
That's really cool. Yeah, I really like this bourbon. I think I like the wheat whiskey, but I think I'm just a bourbon lover at heart. So like this one is absolutely, I'm loving this one. But I do want to try the blend of the two. Tell us about this. How did this blend come about?
So, of course, we have barrels aging at MGP, and I would have about every quarter, I would have them pull samples for me and send me bottles of them. And so I'd get, I think, 3 barrels of wheat and 3 barrels of bourbon. Mm-hmm. And I'd be in my lab and I'd taste each of them. So I'd have 6 classes of whiskey. Mm-hmm. I don't finish my entire sample.
Sure.
So, but I don't want to dump the whiskey down the sink either.
We didn't like there. I always in my stream with a glass. I'm like, do I dump this? Nah, I'll drink it.
Down it. And so instead of trying to carry 6 glasses back to my office, I actually would dump all of them into 1 glass. Mm-hmm. You get less stares when you only have 1 glass in your hand.
Okay.
And I realized that I actually really enjoyed how the wheat whiskey and the high rye bourbon played with each other and kind of balanced and also enhanced each other. And so that's where it started. And we did, a couple different blend ratios, a couple different proofs, just tested everything out. Ultimately landed on a 50-50 blend. So it is 50% high rye bourbon, 50% wheat whiskey. And we settled on 100 proof for this as well. That proof just seemed to let both really shine in their own ways.
So do they ever go into the barrel together, or are they mixed after the barrel?
Mixed after.
Okay, gotcha. So it's technically a 4-grain whiskey. I mean, I feel like that's the trendy thing now.
That's what my boss wanted to put on the label, and I wouldn't let him do it because it wasn't fermented and distilled with 4 grains.
Sure.
He tried.
Yeah.
He tried to play the 4-grain card.
Well, I mean, I think again, it's just a phrase that sometimes it's talked up. I think I've seen some brands do 4-grain and it doesn't work very well. Yes. So I think it's just a hype word, but that's the first thing that came to mind. The nose on this one, though, whoa! I think it's the most interesting on the nose.
Well, because is it a bourbon or is it a wheat whiskey?
Well, it has like the lighter sweetness of the wheat one, but there's still that smoky aspect that I really like about the bourbon.
And just a hint of rye spice comes through.
I gotta give this a taste. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh wow, that goes a lot of different directions. It's like in my mouth. It's like bang, 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 bang. That's really cool. I go back to the honey note that I got on the first one. Mm-hmm. I have that, but I think it almost has definitely a longer finish than both of them individually. Yes. I think it's got a longer finish. I think it overall, like mouthfeel wise, it's very thick and viscous. Well, how is this so different? I'm so confused. I'm like, what? So do you pick favorites? Like what's your favorite out of these 3?
I think the blend is probably my favorite overall, just because it is such a fun product. Mm-hmm. And because of the rye in it and the higher proof, you can do really good cocktails with it. Whereas, a wheat whiskey's kind of hard to do cocktails. It kind of gets lost a little bit. But I also do really enjoy the wheat whiskey. It's just such a light, easy drinker.
And it's definitely, like you said, it's always a good one. I always love having something on hand for friends that aren't quite into whiskey. And I think, like you said, a wheat whiskey is a great intro whiskey to somebody. Especially if they're drinking it neat. I mean, like you said, it may not hold up too well in cocktails, but I mean, I always like introduce people to a cocktail first, and I'm like, okay, now you got your basis. Try this.
Yep, exactly. Because if they can't handle the cocktail, they probably can't handle it straight.
I have those friends that can't handle a cocktail either, so it's so hard because I have so few friends. Like in the real world, not on Whiskey Tube or whatever, that just so few of them that drink whiskey, other than I've fortunately joined a couple groups out here that are like local whiskey groups, which are awesome. But like my friend groups, no, they'll drink their White Claws, which no offense to White Claws. I'll enjoy a White Claw every now and then, but well, so here's a question. So if you're not drinking Huling Station and your own whiskey, what do you typically drink? Are you bourbons that you're interested in, or are you a wine drinker? Just curious to hear.
I'm actually more of a wine drinker, especially after, a long day at work or whatever. Give me a glass of red wine and I just kind of like chill out and just slide right into bed at that point.
By a good red wine, I like a cheap red wine. My wine limit is a lot lower than my bourbon limit. Maybe I'll work my way up, but
yeah, we absolutely. I'm not ashamed to say we have a box of red wine in our refrigerator right now.
Not gonna lie, we got box wine too. So yeah.
And ours is Kirkland brand, so it's from Costco.
Okay, so we haven't dabbled too much. We're still on the Franzia. We have Franzia Cabernet. Well, first of all, we ordered one for grocery delivery, and they gave us the Franzia sweet red blend. That was awful. I was like, oh god, this is gross. No. But I was like, their Cabernet, it's pretty legit for a $15 box of wine.
That's how the Costco one is. It's Cab Sav, and I think it's $13.
They're so convenient too, because my husband, he literally takes his into the bath with him. He just has the box there. He's like, you know what? I need a refill.
I haven't done that. I'm gonna have to steal them. Do that.
That's why he's in there for a couple hours, because he's just drinking that boxed wine and like, man, it sounds relaxing.
In boxed wine, it keeps longer.
Oh, it does. That's my thing with the wine. Like with bourbon, you can have a bottle that lasts, a year if you take care of it. Yeah. I mean, more obviously, but I don't usually make it last that long because I drink it all. But
wine,
you can't say. I mean, you can say if you do the little aerator thing, it saves for a bit. But box wine is where it's at.
I have the vacuum pump thing for my wine.
Work? Is that
it does. It does. Okay. I keep it. I'm able to make a wine last for a week and a half, and it's still fine. It's good. Now I'm not buying $80 bottles of wine.
Yeah. That's awesome. I missed a question earlier. I'm so sorry, Donnie. He ask Alex if there are any special single barrels or anything like that coming out soon. We have 4 different single barrel picks and are thinking of picking up one more this week. Do you guys have anything like that coming soon? He's in the Memphis area, so.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm like, where are you at? Yes, so we do have single barrel picks, and actually in Memphis, Yorkshire Liquors just dropped their most recent single barrel pick from us yesterday or the day before. And then 901 Wine and Spirits Market also just dropped their single barrel pick this week as well. So those both should still be available. And we do single barrel picks in most of our markets. We've definitely done a couple in Georgia. We're about to do a couple in Kentucky with Liquor Barn. I believe we've got one planned for Texas coming up. So we do try to spread our single barrels around.
So Brian Brennicky is in India. Do you have any coming up for Indiana?
We are not in Indiana yet. I think we're seeing how Kentucky does. Let that kind of take, and then kind of let it spread to Ohio, Indiana. Those are definitely on the radar. We just aren't there yet.
Gotcha. Well, Brian says he's heading down to Louisville anyways in a few weeks. So
Liquor Barn. Go to Liquor Barn.
Yeah. So actually, Tom has a good question. So since we're talking about wine, have you guys considered doing any kind of finishing, or are you a fan of finished whiskeys?
So we have a couple that we have done finishing in, not in wine barrels. So I have great partnerships with the breweries in Memphis and have given barrels to pretty much all of them. And there's one in particular, that Meddlesome Brewing, that went kind of crazy with the barrels we gave them and did some kooky beers. And I ended up taking 2 of the barrels back 2 years ago, and then took 2 more back recently. And one of the beers they did was actually an oatmeal and raisin cookie ale.
Wow.
And put it in the barrel, and then I took that barrel back. So we actually have an oatmeal and raisin cookie.
Is that on the label?
So they call it all the cookies, is what they call it. So it's all
cool.
the cookies. And so we actually have all the cookies bourbon. So we are doing that type of finishing. Mm-hmm. I will say doing anything in wine barrels makes me very, very nervous, because wine is very susceptible to having sulfur in the barrel and a couple other things that you may not be able to detect until you've already put your bourbon in. And once the bourbon is in, there's no undoing it. So I'm just very, very skeptical of it. And
Mhm.
you really want to get your wine barrel from someone like down the road.
Right.
So it's fresh, and
Sure.
we don't really have
Oh,
any wineries in
yeah.
West Tennessee.
Yeah, we don't have wineries here in California either, honestly.
See, if I was in California, honestly, I probably would be a lot more open to it
Sure.
because I know that they could empty that barrel this morning and my butt would be driving there and picking it up that afternoon.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think I see what you're saying, especially with like a lot of the wine finished ones. Sometimes, I mean, like you said, it's a gamble. You know, is it going to turn out amazing? Is it going to turn out sulfurous or whatever? I mean, that's.
And if it does, you can't fix it. You lost it.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. In that case, I feel like some people think the other way. People say that you finish a bad whiskey that you don't like unfinished, so you like finish it, and make it good. That's what some people are doing, but.
And I guess if I found a barrel I didn't think was very good, I would go ahead and take that gamble, I guess.
That's a good point. Well, that's so cool. Well, I did want to have a question. Like I said, you are the first female head distiller of Tennessee, correct?
Yes, since Prohibition.
That's so cool. And I think what I want to ask is like, do you see, I think the industry is changing so much literally in the past like 3 to 4 years. Like we're seeing, female head distillers in Kentucky. We're seeing them all over. Do you think what do you think of the future of whiskey? Do you think this is going to change anything? Do you think, obviously it's going to be better because diversity is always better, but where do you see it going?
Honestly, I think we're getting so much, not just diversity, but just new blood in the industry. If you think about Kentucky, it's just been the good old boys for so long that they were just sticking to the same thing. Nothing was really changing. If you think about those distilleries, none of them had put out new products in decades. It's where I think having more women come in, finally having African-American owned distilleries, all of that, and seeing younger people at the helm, I think you're just going to see the category just start to open up and see these crazy, fun, new, different concepts come out that 10 years ago you never would have even heard someone like thinking about.
Sure.
I think the industry is it's already started, I think, to just kind of get more fun.
Well, that's a good point. And I also think I think a lot of people look to see themselves in brands. So I think, I know our good friend Whiskey Mountains here. She actually just started her own YouTube channel. She is a Latina whiskey tuber, which is there's like one other one.
Yeah, you don't hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so cool. And I think, and she, by the way, as soon as I told her you were going to be on, she was so excited. So shout out to you, Adriana. But seriously, I think really it's opening a world, not just expanding the industry, making it more interesting, but you're getting a different audience. You're getting a different, type of consumer. If they see a woman, master distiller, they're going to be like, wow, you know what? Go her. I'm going to go buy that whiskey.
And that's exactly it. For so long, the whiskey consumer was a white man. And more often than not, someone who's at least 40 years old, if not older.
Not me, but yeah, no,
it was this very strict, vision of a consumer. And yes, by having more women in the industry and putting us out there so you can see us, suddenly our consumer base is starting to expand to women in a way it never did. And same with other ethnicities and just all these different groups. They're finally being represented in manufacturing. And so it's starting to translate to our consumers as well, which for me, it makes my job that much more fun because I get to meet a much wider variety of people than just the average original, whiskey drinker from 10 years ago.
Right. Well, not to say has your journey been tough? That's like a weird question, obviously. But I'm just saying, have you noticed any kind of opposition, as you are taking on this role? Are people generally accepting of it, or have you still seen a bit of, obviously sexism in the industry?
I have been very fortunate. I know probably actually the rare story. I have not had any issues, faced any sexism, anything in the industry. I shouldn't say I've never have. I've done tastings where some guy comes up and doesn't know who I am, and so tries to explain to me what bourbon is.
Oh my God, I can't. I want to hear your response to that. Like,
And
like,
so, and
I'm like, actually.
I just let it go. I'm like, whatever, dude, you do you. That's fine. But other than those rare instances,
Sure.
I have just been incredibly fortunate that everywhere I've worked has been very open and encouraging. And I mean, Old Dominick took a chance on a 20-something-year-old female.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time that there is no distillery that would have ever done that.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool, and that's honestly, I'm seeing that a lot. Like you said, with the smaller brands, they are willing to take that chance. The old, tried and true brands are still working on it, but they're getting there. There's some
getting there.
Master tasters and things like that. Like I totally am on board with that, but I think it's the smaller ones that are really shining right now, and I think that's why they're booming, honestly, in the industry. Well, I know you got to head out soon. One final question. Do you have any advice to women that are interested in getting into the spirits industry? Any tips, anything, words of encouragement, because I know there are probably some watching this stream.
Network. If you already know any connections, whether it's a liquor store owner, a bar owner, bar manager, a friend that runs a brewery, whatever it is, use your network, because that's honestly how I've gotten almost every job I've had in the industry is through my network. That just you slow build and go. But also, if you are super passionate about this, if you really think that this is where you want to be, mm-hmm. Forget the fact that you're a woman in a man's world. Forget that there possibly is some sort of obstacle, and just go for it. Because this industry is phenomenal. It is amazing and it's worth any uphill battle you may have to fight.
Well said. That's awesome. So first question, where can people find you on the web? Are you on Instagram, Twitter, anything like that?
So I'm on Instagram at Memphis Distiller, and I'm also on Facebook. I have a personal page, but also a professional page. I pretty much accept friend requests from anyone at this point. But it's the same post that's on Instagram. So, and you'll see me post about work, but also a little bit about my personal life there. I got a dog I got to post about,
Oh, what's your dog's name?
Whiskey.
Oh my gosh. That's I should know. That's so cool. Well, I'll definitely check out your Instagram to hopefully see Whiskey there. Yes. But you are about to go on to another live stream. Where if people want to head over and watch you there, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm about to do an Instagram live with the Bourbon Bell.
The Bourbon Bell. And I think is it
it's underscore the Bourbon Bell underscore.
So if you guys go to the Old Dominick Instagram story, they link to it earlier. That's how I found out about it. So you can click through there. Please go watch it. Tell her I sent you, so we know you're following through. Well, again, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure. I am very excited for the things to come. I mean, maybe we'll have you back on in fall of 2022 when that Tennessee whiskey comes out. But awesome. Well, yeah, I think that's it. But thank you so much for coming on. And until next time, this has been Bourbon Bites, whiskey reviews with the gaming twist. Cheers.
Cheers.